I talked to Dad last night, and the funeral went well. He said they're going to go to church this morning and try to get about halfway back. But I thought it was neat because all of us go through discouragement, and that's what I want to talk about a little bit this morning is trials and troubles. And we all have our share of them, don't we? I would guess if you were in Sunday school this morning and I was in the Dad's office doing some studying for the lesson, the sermon, I guess, whatever you want to call it. I'm not a preacher, obviously. But I was in there doing some studying, but I would bet in your Sunday school class there were more prayer requests than there were praises in general, right? So we all have our share of trials and troubles and things that we go through, and that's what I want to talk about this morning. But it was neat that for Dad, most of you know he has a tough time or tougher time getting around sometimes than others, dealing with his arthritis and things that are going on. So some days he struggles, some days he gets around better than others, but the trip wears him out. It's hard on him. But he was uplifted last night, I guess you'd say, because he preached a revival at his friend's church several years ago. And he said that at the funeral last night, a lady came up to him and said that her 8-year-old son, he wouldn't remember her, but she knew him and would never forget him because her 8-year-old son was saved at one of the services that Dad preached at. And then another guy came up to Dad, and he was in his 80s and said, "You don't know me. I came to one of the services. I didn't come up front. I didn't talk to you. I didn't do anything." But he said, "I kept thinking about what you said." And shortly after that, I got in church, and he said, "I've not missed since then. I'm in church." So the thing about trials, and hopefully the positive side that we can gain from that, and also this morning, is God's working in the middle of them, isn't he? Amen. You know, for Dad to go down there and have to preach a funeral for a close friend of 40 years was not an easy task to do. But to be able to go down there and get some refreshing news and let God know that you were used and you're still being used is a good thing, right? In 1927, there was a silent film called Wings. Most of us weren't around in 1927, so we probably don't remember, but there was a silent film called Wings. It won the first Academy Award for Best Picture. As this film was being filmed, it was about 2 American aviators in World War I, and the director stopped the production for a couple days. And the producers began to get frustrated because, you know, for them, time's money like us. We got to hurry up and get this thing going. And they asked him, "Why have you stopped production?" And I want to read what he said. He said, "All we have is blue sky. The conflict in the air will not be as visible without clouds. Clouds bring perspective." He was right. Only by seeing aerial combat with clouds as a backdrop could the viewer see what was really going on. You think about that, we all want blue skies, don't we? We all want life to be smooth, and we all look for blue skies, but sometimes it's in the clouds that God's faithfulness is revealed to us, isn't it? It's easy when things are going good, we overlook things, but it takes those storms sometimes, those clouds as a backdrop for us to be able to say, God's still here. For us to see the conflict and to see what's going on. It says that. There's another book I want to read out, a quote out of it. It's called "Life is Like Licking Honey Off a Thorn." Now, if that doesn't tell you what it's about, the title in itself makes you want to read the book, doesn't it? Life is like licking honey off a thorn. 2 things the author says. We take the laughter and the tears however they come and let our God of reality make sense of it all. Sounds good, but do we do that? We take the laughter and the tears and let the God of reality make sense of it all. She goes on to say, some people are optimists who camp in pleasures and good memories, denying the brokenness. You know anybody like that can just somehow they find the good in every situation? There's the eternal optimist. She goes on to say, others are pessimists who focus on life's losses, losing joy and victory in the process. How many times do we do that? Instead of focusing on what we have, we focused on what we didn't get. And in the process, we lose that joy and lose that sense of victory in the process, don't we? But she says, for those that are of faith, which should be us, I hope should be all of us, we are realists who receive it all the good and the bad of life, and repeatedly choose to know that God really loves us and is constantly at work for our good and his glory. When you're in the middle of a trial, it's not always easy to do that, is it? But we know that God loves us. Some of the songs sang about this morning, Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. When you think about things like that, do we realize how good God really is? Look in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. This is a verse that I'd actually, when I was doing some studying, read the verse but was not going to use it, and then this morning decided to do different because of something that in the footnotes it spoke to me. It says, "There is no temptation taken you, but such is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you are able, but will with temptation also make a way to escape, that you may be able to bear it." Let's go ahead and pray. Dear God, we thank you again for this morning. Certainly thank you for the opportunity to speak. Pray that you would be with me, that you would continue to calm my nerves as we go through the next few minutes, dear God. Pray that you would give Dad and Mom an enjoyable service where they're at this morning. Give him some refreshing and some replenishment. Pray that you'd give him a safe trip back the rest of the way today. Pray that you'd be with us today in the Lord's Supper. I pray that there's any of us that need to get rid of some things before we partake of that we would do that we'd realize the seriousness of that, dear God, and the importance of taking time to do the Lord's Supper. Pray that you'd just be with this message. Pray that it would speak to someone in the audience that's going through a trial or going through a tough time, that we'd be able to take and use it and be able to show others how we as Christians should be able to survive, and not only survive, but to be prosperous during times of troubles with you, dear God. We ask this in your name. Amen. I want to read something, and I don't like to do a lot of reading when I'm speaking because I think anybody can read and stand up here and do it, but I do want to read this footnote about 1 Corinthians 10:13. It says, "Making a way to escape," and then it says, "an egress or a way out." In early Greek usage, the term had the sense of a landing place for a ship. So I've always read that verse and thought, man, he's going to get me out of it. I can escape and get a way out of it. But what God really means is, I'm just going to get you through it and give you a safe landing place, somewhere safe that you can land. One of the things that I wrote down was that God promises a safe landing, not necessarily a calm passage. You know, sometimes we got to hit some bumps in the roads, don't we? Sometimes we go through some things. Back over in James chapter 1 and verse 12, "Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him." We all want the crown, don't we? We just don't want the stuff that you have to do to get there, right? Anybody ever played sports before? You have to practice, don't you? Anybody ever trying to get in shape? I need to lose about 20 pounds right now, so I'm going to have to do something. I don't want to do the stuff necessarily that it takes to get there, though. We all want the crown. We just don't want the bumps that go along with it to get there, the trials, the stuff that we have to deal with to go through it. But we all have to go through that. In Romans chapter 5, it talks about tribulation or trials, and it bringeth forth patience, worketh patience, which would have to do with perseverance, and then that brings character. So we all want the crown, but do we want to have to deal with the trials to get the strength and the character that builds? Last week in Sunday school, we were talking about some things, and one of Jill's answers was its character. You know, we all want to have character, don't we? Or you should. Doing what's right when nobody's around. You know, making sure that God's pleased with the way that we do things. So in the midst of the trial, how do we handle those things? How do we react? How do we do those things? So what can we learn in tough times? What can we get out of tough times? And I'll try to be like the chicken that's going to lay an egg on the interstate and try to lay it on the line and do it quick this morning since we got the Lord's Supper. But one is enjoyment. You think, how in the world could I enjoy going through a tough time? It's not the tough time you enjoy, it's you know what God's going to do through the tough time that you can enjoy, right? Back in December, I wound up having to go the day after Christmas to the emergency room. I don't get sick hardly ever, but I had thrown up for probably 17 hours straight, I bet. I mean, I was miserable. The doctor to me is not where I want to be, period. But I reached a point that I was willing to go to the doctor, and I reached the point that I'm scared of needles, don't want a needle around me. But I tell you, I felt so bad the needle didn't hurt, and I knew whatever they were going to do was going to make me better. So I enjoyed the idea that, man, I'm going to get better. I'm going to get through this and get over this and get back to what I normally feel like. When it comes to trials, we ought to find some way to have some enjoyment in our trials, how do you find that enjoyment? You have to trust that you know God's working to your good, right? He's bringing us through something. Let me slide this out of the way because the top part of this thing's shadowing my notes here. There's a song, I don't usually bring my phone up here, but I got the lyrics to this song. And some of you will remember this was back in the 70s. It's a TV show called Good Times. Anybody remember that show? You remember that? I should have got you to sing that as a special, man. Good times, anytime you need a payment. Good times, anytime you need a friend. Good times, anytime you're out from under. Not getting hassled, not getting hustled, keeping your head above water, making a way when you can. Temporary layoffs, good times. Easy credit rip-offs, good times. Scratching and surviving, good times. Hanging in a chow line, good times. Ain't we lucky we got 'em, good times. I don't know one thing that before good times, it was what I'd call a good time. Do you? Scratching, surviving, hanging in there. But that family, if you remember in that TV show, found a way to always be able to laugh with one another, to find some joy, to be able to get through some things. So that family was able to find enjoyment in the middle of tough times. Individually, we all are going through our own individual trials and troubles and things that go on. I'm sure collectively that affects your family sometimes. At church, we're going through some tough times. We're going through some difficult times. Can we find a way, though, to still find God's joy in the middle of all that? You know, there's a quote that I keep in my office. I keep little quotes, and it says, pain is inevitable, misery is optional. You know, we choose a lot of times just to be miserable, don't we? Pain is inevitable. We're all going to deal with some bumps and bruises. They're coming. They're here. They're going to be here. We all lose loved ones. We just, Thursday, just went to the cemetery. It's been a year since Joy's mom passed away. So we went there, and then we went to eat at McAllister's because that was her favorite place to eat. So we were able to laugh. There was some crying. It was good times, though. Remembering some good times. Not that we lost her mom, not the trial that we lost her mom, but the good times. God worked that out for good times, didn't he? We found enjoyment in being able to be there together on Thursday. What are you going through, and are you miserable? Are you going to let the devil win at it? Are you going to be able to find some joy, some peace, some promise in God and know that he's in control? In the midst of trials, we can have enjoyment. We can learn enjoyment. The next thing is enlargement. Look in Psalm chapter 4 and verse 1. Psalms 4:1. Hear me when I call, O God, of my righteousness. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. Have mercy upon me and hear my prayer. Enlarged, if you look that up, it says relieved me. We need to find some enlargement, be able to be empowered by going through trials. You remember David's story of Goliath? Everybody remembers that. But what led up to David and Goliath? What did David say when he was going to face him? I killed a lion and I killed a bear. And this Philistine is just going to be another step in the process. Because he went through trials, he was enlarged and empowered, and he was ready for the next one because he said, God delivered me with a lion. He delivered me, relieved me with a bear, and this big joker's not going to do anything different but die just like they did. Amen. And that's why in the middle of trials sometimes we need to be able to find enlargement. I got a quote from Michael Jordan, another one that I keep in my office. It says, I've missed 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot, and I missed. I failed over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Everybody remembers Michael Jordan for the shots he hit, for the things he did, the miraculous stuff he did, but Michael Jordan remembers the 26 times he didn't hit the shot, and it pushes him to do it better. It pushes him to practice. That's why he was great. Not because he hit the shot, it's because he said, because I missed it. 9,000 times he missed shots in his career, so it made him shoot and practice and more and more and more so that he didn't continue to do that. We too many times let the trials knock us down and give up, don't we? Just want to throw in the towel on the We missed a shot, man, don't throw me the ball again, God. Give it to somebody else. I can't handle that. Pass that on to somebody else. But Michael Jordan said, I failed over and over again, and that's why I'm successful, because it pushed him, it enlarged him. Do we feel enlarged when we go through the troubles that we go through? Most of the things we learn, or that we know best, for most of us, we learned it the hard way, didn't we? The easy lessons are easy to forget. The hard lessons, they stick with you, don't they? I can remember one time when I was a teenager, and I had a smart mouth. Some of you may not know that. Wanted to get the last word in, and so the Sunday school classes heard this example before. I don't remember what I did, but I know it was my mouth got me into the trouble. And I wound up getting grounded and getting punished. And so Mom and Dad had a freezer. You had to clean out all the rubber Tupperware freezer things, and I had to clean all them out. And at my parents' house, there's a hill, and they used to have a wood-burning stove, and Dad kept the whole side of the house, had chopped wood on it. And he told me he didn't like the wood beside the house, move it to the top of the hill and restack it at the fence. So I did, with a wheelbarrow, by the way. That was the way I got to do it. So I got it all stacked up there, went back to the door and said, all right, I've got that done. I'm thinking, I'm out of here. I'm fixed, this is over. He didn't even give me the time of day hardly to come to the door, and he just barely stood up and looked, and he said, I don't like it there. Go put it back where you got it. So not an easy lesson, but I definitely learned who's in charge, and it stuck with me. Keep your mouth shut. It was not a pleasant weekend for me, and the week after wasn't either, because I was pretty sore. But I remembered the lesson. God's not just wasting our time with trials. He's not just throwing things out there because he wants you to have a rough day tomorrow at work or a rough week. God wants you to learn something from it. He wants you to be empowered by it so that the next time it comes around, you'll be enlarged to be able to step up to the plate and do it and be able to handle it. Like David to say, I killed a lion, I killed a bear, and Goliath, you're next. God, this was a big problem. How many times you've gone through problems that you've thought, man, it can't get any worse, only to find out it gets worse, doesn't it? But what happens? You think the next time can't get any worse, and you just get through it, don't you? With God's help, you just keep getting through it because we become enlarged and empowered by that. The third thing that we can gain from trouble is enlightenment. Look in Psalm chapter 112 and verse 4. 112 verse 4. Unto the upright there ariseth light in the darkness. He is gracious and full of compassion. You think about light, sometimes we just think we know it all, don't we? We think we got it all figured out, and God has to throw a little something in our way to make you realize your plan's not the best plan. Your plan's not the right plan. You need to get on board with what I've got it going through. So sometimes for us, it takes some trials and some tribulations to do that. For most of us, men especially, it takes us messing something up to go back and read the instructions, doesn't it? I got it all figured out. I can see it. I can do it myself until I get it put together, and there's 5 pieces still left there, and then I have to go back and read the instructions and figure it out. But, when we go through trials, we can find enlightenment. Look over in Job if you've got your Bible. If not, I've got it marked. I'm going to try to hurry here. But Job chapter 3, and everybody remembers what Job went through. But listen at these 2 things. This is Job when he's going through everything. He's in the middle of some real bad stuff. Job 3, chapter 3, verses 3 and 5. He says, let the day perish when I was born, and let the night in which it was said, there's a man-child conceived. Let that day be darkness. Let not God regard it from above. Neither let the light shine upon it. Let darkness and the shadow of death stain it. Let a cloud dwell upon it. Let the blackness of the day terrify it. He doesn't sound like he's very happy, does he? He says, let the day I was born. He's basically saying, this is so bad, I wish I was never born. Have you ever felt like, God, I can't take any more? I just can't deal with it. Whatever the situation is, maybe it's financial, maybe it's physical, maybe it's emotional, whatever the case is, we all get to that breaking point sometimes, don't we, where you just say, God, I'm throwing in the towel. Enough's enough. But Job, the same guy that just said that, in chapter 42 and verse 5, says, I have heard of thee by hearing of the ear, but now mine eyes seeth thee. Job was a good man, but it took some bad stuff for Job just to finally see God for who he really is. Sometimes in order for us to be enlightened, we have to go through some dark times to just see how good God really is, to be able to have some light shine in and see where we're at, so we can be able to have enlightenment. We can have enlargement, we can have enjoyment, we can have enlargement, we can have enlightenment that we can learn through tough times. And the last thing is endurance. We all need to be able to realize we just got to keep going sometimes, don't we? Sometimes the only way out is just to keep going. I got a friend in Arkansas that is a big four-wheeler mud riding guy. I mean, he does all kinds of crazy stuff. He's got nitro on his four-wheeler for getting out of mud. I mean, he's into all kinds of stuff. But you know, the key for him, why he said he put that nitro on there, is not to go fast. He said, it's when I'm right in the middle of the bog, if I stop, I sink. It's over. He said, when I'm in the middle, I have to just keep going. He goes to all kinds of four-wheeler competitions across the country. I didn't even know things like that existed, but he's into this deal. But what's the key for him? He just has to keep going, isn't it? When he's in the middle of the thickest, the worst kind of mud and junk that you can imagine, he said the most important thing for me to do is to be able to just keep moving. The minute he stops, his four-wheeler sinks, and it's over with. Sometimes in life, when we're going through our tough times and going through our trials, the most important thing we can do is just keep moving. Just endure. Just keep trusting God and keep plugging away. Don't throw in the towel. Don't give up. Don't quit. Don't stop. Just endure. Just say, I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to keep going forward. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how far I'm going to go. Don't know what's going to happen at the end, but I'm going to trust you, God, that you're going to help me get through this. You're going to get me to the end of where I need to be. So when you're going through trials and when you're going through tough times, what can you learn from that? What can you take from that? We can take enjoyment. Find a way to find peace and find happiness in God, not your circumstances. Find a way to find it in God and to know that at the end of the day, He's working it for your good. Find a way to be enlarged by that, empowered. Learn from the lesson. Don't let the lesson be wasted. You know, make the most of it and figure it out that, God, I'm going to use this lesson so that next time I'm prepared for the next one. Because there's a next one coming, so we might as well be ready for it, right? Let it enlighten you. Let it show you how good God is. Let it show us how to trust God. And then finally, let it show you endurance, that sometimes you just got to keep going. Just keep on going. Stick it out. You know, God didn't promise it'd be easy. He just promised that safe landing place. So will you stick it out? Will you see it through to the end? That's what He wants from us, isn't it? Let's go ahead and bow your head, and then I want to read a quick story to you that I had read, or just basically recap a story. I read this story about some friends that were hunting in England, and as they were hunting in England, one of the hunters twisted his ankle so bad that he couldn't continue on. And they were hunting outside of Balmoral, which is the estate where the Queen of England spends her summers. And he told his friends just to continue on, that he would just lay by the side of the road and that he would wait on them to get back there. A car pulls up beside him, and the lady asks him, is he okay? He tells her what's happened, what's going on. She said, get in the car and I'll give you a ride and back to where you need to go, and you can meet your friends there. It turns out that ride was the Queen of England. It'd be difficult and almost unimaginable to think that the Queen of England would stop and help you stuck on the road, wouldn't it? But we've got a far greater person that wants to help us in the middle of our troubles. We've got a God that loves you, the Creator, created the whole universe, and He says, whatever you're going through that's got you stopped right now, get in, and I'll help you make it to the other side. I'll get you where I need to go. Let's go ahead and pray. Dear God, thank you again for today. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for the people that are here this morning. Again, we pray that you'd give Mom and Dad a safe trip back the rest of the way after church this morning. Pray that you'd be with the Lord's Supper, be with the ones that are directing that and handling that, and be with those of us that are partaking in it, dear God. Pray that you would help us in the middle of troubles that we're all going to go through. I pray you'd help us to be able to find some enjoyment in that and just peace in knowing that you're working it for our good. I pray that we would receive enlargement, that we would learn from the lesson, that we would get enlightenment and see how good you are. And I pray that most of all, dear God, you'd help us just to keep on, not to throw in the towel, but to just keep fighting the fight. We ask this in your name. Amen.